one of the things about the rhino speculators, they have a couple of one-liners which they trot out on a regular basis, and they keep saying the CITES ban has never worked. But the CITES ban has worked. So on elephants, we had this extraordinary period in the 70s and 80s where the elephants were being plundered. And something like 100,000 elephants a year were being shot throughout Africa. But in southern Africa, because we had the apartheid government and all the rest of it, kind of nobody really knew what was happening in the rest of Africa, and all the rhino speculators are based in South Africa. So what happened was, in that period, is that the folks down in South Africa keep saying that the rhino ban and the elephant ban never worked, but they don't know what happened in the rest of Africa, where in 1990, the Kenyans were being pounded throughout East Africa, and where the elephant population was taking a massive pounding, and the numbers were plummeting. So in 1990, President Moy and Richard Leakey went around the world, and they lobbied to go and get all elephants placed on Appendix 1. They had this big ivory burn in Nairobi National Park in 1990, and that ignited the imagination of the world. And overnight, once elephants were placed onto Appendix 1, and the PR work had done around the main ivory markets, the US was a lot of it in those days, the elephant poaching crisis disappeared within 1 year. And elephant poaching never reappeared again until 2008, when South Africa went to the world and said, we want to sell our stocks of ivory from natural mortalities, and the money is going to conservation. Another quick one-liner. And I want to show you one graph which really illustrates that whole point. You can see how the numbers throughout Africa are plummeting. This low point is the time when elephants were all placed on Appendix 1, and there was therefore no market, and with no market, there is no poaching. The numbers of elephants throughout Africa increased all the way up to 2008, when elephants in southern Africa were placed on Appendix 2. And once you have elephants placed on Appendix 2, you have loopholes. And from that moment, the ivory crisis absolutely came right the way throughout Africa. We had this extraordinary poaching tsunami of elephant ivory, driven mainly by a lot of the militia throughout Africa. But the moment elephants were placed on Appendix 1 and there was no market, ivory poaching stopped. The ban did work. And likewise with rhinos. Oh yes, rhinos. We had this massive period in the 70s and 80s where rhinos throughout Africa were almost extinct. We went from the 65,000 down to 4,000 rhinos in total. And the signatory countries for CITES had already signed up since the 70s, but they only implemented CITES legislation in 1993 and early 1994. And that was through the Pelly Amendment. And the threat of continued use of rhino products forced the countries in Asia to stop using rhino products immediately. China even went as far as in 1994 January, China went and burnt its ivory stocks. And from that moment, from 1993, all the major consuming countries for rhino horn stopped consuming rhino horn. They made it illegal, and overnight, all rhino poaching stopped, and the golden years from rhinos continued from 1993, 1994, all the way through to 2005. And what happened in 2005? South Africa went to the world, and we managed to get Southern African rhinos put onto Appendix 2, which meant there were loopholes. And from 1995 to 2010, we in South Africa sold over 1,000 rhino hunts under the loophole. And who bought those rhino hunts? Vietnamese criminals came into South Africa en masse, and they bought 1,000 rhino hunts, and along that came the 1,000 CITES permits. So you suddenly had legal rhino horn in Asia with legal CITES certificates, which gave the impetus to start the illegal markets. And it's purely because we opened up loopholes. When the ivory ban was fully in place in 1993, 1994, all that poaching stopped because there was no market, and with no market there's no poaching. So for anybody to say the rhino bans have not worked, they have not done their homework, they have not seen what's happened internationally, they have not understood what happened in that period of 1993-94 with rhinos and 1989-90 with elephants. And in both cases, the CITES ban did work.